Enterprise Architecture and Data Group in the Division of Data Enterprise Services. I'm currently one of our tech leads working with master data management in the enterprise data lake. I also am a provider SME and do a lot of our customer support in education for running master data integration user group meetings as well. I'm going to go to the next slide. We have Sandhya Chituri with us. She is our developer and maintainer of both the MDM and EDL systems. She's with Next Phase Solutions and Services. She is our data lead, and we work together on many occasions, educating analysts and folks around the agency, contractors, and government employees alike in the ways of how to utilize some of our provider data offerings we'll be walking through with you today. Next slide. For today, we're going to walk through, initially give you an overview of our master data management system, what we do at master data management at CMS. We're then going to walk through an overview of our provider data product offerings, which is our provider master index, otherwise known as the PMI, and our shared provider profile, which is the SPP. And we have a subset of information that we've also consolidated from our EP data product called our MPI profile tables. And you'll learn what makes those much easier for folks at times to work with. And lastly, we will walk through some of the newest information we've added to both the PMI, SPP, and MPI profile tables, and that's our gender, race, ethnicity, and language data. And we'll walk through how you can query that new data in both of our provider data products today. Next slide, please. So first, we're going to walk through quickly here an overview of master data management and what we do for the agency. Primarily, master data management is an enterprise shared service. And what we do is we provide identity resolution and link critical data from each of the different domains from multiple data sources across the agency. We consolidate and standardize this data as a result of our identity resolution tool and end up creating an enterprise master ID identifier or EID. And this is what allows folks to actually track and work with data across the different source systems and being able to use the enterprise ID. And we'll have Sandhya walk through that briefly. Let me start going down that path. We have multiple sets of data as well that we work with. At the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to see that we have the provider master index, share provider profile information. A lot of this is bringing data in from Pecos as the day it was retired in June of 2018. We also have the alternate payment model information from the CMMI models. Basically, their alignment data, we bring that in as well to MDM and the non-claims-based payment data. Next slide, please. Okay, here if you want to take a look at this is a little explanation as to what we do and how we ID resolve the information. At the bottom of this slide, you'll see there's data from several sources and how we integrate that and curate it into our one data product. Again, that information goes through our ID resolution tool. We use Novetta and also some ETL, and we end up creating what's called our PMI, our primary index, and that creates and has the enterprise identifier. And with that identifier, and we also have what is called a common code reference table, and that common code reference table provides the source systems of record values. And we, for instance, in MPES, they use numeric codes, whereas in Pecos, they use alphabetic codes, say for names. Well, we basically integrate those codes so you can walk them across those different data sources and put them in that table. Along with that, in our provider master index, it allows one to take a look at how we've integrated the data into these various tables. We have that information in the PMI SPP, as you see in both sides of this screenshot. And then at the top, there's a subset of different information that we fill out within the MPI profile data product. In terms of how to access this information, we have it available for extracts. Some of them we currently are producing in the mainframe environment. We offer right now the information in our analytic data mart within the IDR. We also have information out there in the enterprise data lake data mesh. And also we are providing information out on CMS's AWS cloud. So we have various ways of providing that data. Lastly, because the ADMs are currently being migrated over in IDR to IDRC, or what's known as IDR Cloud in Snowflake, we are working with that team in getting all of the information in from the PMI SPP, as well as the alternate payment model information in IDRC, so that folks can access that no matter which direction you're coming into. But also we are providing that information directly into the CDR, and I believe the CDR is currently capturing information from our enterprise data lake and bringing that into the central data repository for you all. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do here is allow Sandhya to now walk everyone through our different data products. We're going to first start with an overview of our provider master index and share provider profiles, and then we'll in turn walk through our MPI profile tables. And lastly, she'll give you an overview about the different new and data that we've brought in, then gender, race, ethnicity, and language, about querying that information in the tables we have. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Sandhya. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. Good afternoon, everyone. So today we'll be presenting updates to our MDM tables. So before we go into detail about the updates, we'll provide some overview of the PMI and SPP data products. So the PMI, as it says, it's a provider master index. It actually has the key identifiers for a provider like name, so that uniquely identify a provider. And it actually has the data from several source systems which are integrated and curated into our data products. And as you see, the data, as Jill mentioned, the data is ID resolved, and it also has both current and historical information from source systems like PECOS, NPES, keys, TMSs. And let's talking about the lean index, right? The one that is in the center, which is in the yellow, highlighted in the yellow. So that is the heart of our data model, where it has the linkage to all other data products. So MDM provider SK is a primary key that links the remaining data products. And the data is curated from different source systems. The one that are highlighted on the pink, which is on the right side. And today we have approximately around 150 provider attributes. And we also, and these PMI SPP tables, they have code values from different provider systems. Like, as Jill mentioned earlier, we have reference data coming from different source system, and each source system has their own way of representing the reference data. For example, PECOS, it represents in the using the alphabets, and for NPES, it used the numerical numbers. So we do standardize the reference data, and we try to populate that in our PMI SPP tables. The next two slides, I don't want to go into detail of each table, but they give us a description of each table and the source systems data that they have. So these are the descriptions, and the one that is highlighted, provider demographic details. So this is what we'll be talking in the next subsequent slides in detail. So earlier, this table has only gender information, and now we have provider demographic details coming from PECOS, and we'll talk about that in more detail. Coming to the SPP tables, which is shared provider profile tables, and they have data sourced from single source. And today it's from like PECOS or and it has a supplemental data attributes that can identify a provider. And as you see here, they are in this data model, we have lean index that we have seen earlier, and that actually links the remaining other tables using MDM provider SK. Moving on, so the next subsequent slides has the descriptions of each table and the sources, the data they have. Moving on, let's talk about our NPI profile tables. So NPI profile tables, today the data is represented at NPI level. So what that means is if you have an NPI, then we always recommend to use NPI profile tables. And they have data from PECOS, and we are planning to do that in our future releases. But at this point, we only have data from NPS, PECOS, and NPS. And also one thing that I want to make a note is, like, these NPI profile tables, comparing to PMI SPP tables, they have the code and descriptions already embedded in them. So you don't need to join with the common code reference table. You can, it also has both current and historical informations, and you have an NPI, and if you want to get the information of any identifiers, like, easy if you have an NPI and how to query NPI profile tables. And one point I want to bring up is in order to create the NPI profile tables, there is like a lot of heavy lifting that was done in the background, because like when talking about the TIN and NPI relationship for provider or reassignments of benefits from PECOS, the relations are complex. Like, if you see our PMI tables, if you want to get the data from PMI SPP tables, or like, role associations or reassignment benefits, there is certain level of complexity involved. But using NPI profile tables, they are straightforward, and it's very user friendly. So this is a data model or a high level overview of how our NPI profiles are designed. So each table represents each attribute, like, tax table, legacy table, and you see that all the tables have NPI as a common attribute. And if you have NPI, you want to look for the name for the name of a provider, then you can try to join with the NPI and you can get the information. And there is one more table, which is NPI Profile Master Table. And latest and greatest recent information coming from either from PECOS or NPS. So, for example, if PECOS and NPS has, same rows, like, name, but takes an example of name, right? But if the PECOS has based on the timestamp, if PECOS has the recent information, then we'll provide data from PECOS. And if NPS has legacy information based on the timestamp, based on the currency, then we'll get the data from NPS and we provide that into our NPI profile master table. So this slide just talks about what we have said earlier. So again, just briefing out. So NPI profile tables has one row per NPI, and it has both current and historical information today. And NPI profile master table has one row per NPI, and will give you a 360 view of the latest information for a given provider. And these are the descriptions of the table and the sources the table has. So now, like, when to use NPI versus the PMI SPP tables, right? So like these are high level representation. Like if you have an NPI, or if you're looking for data from PECOS, NPS, or NPEX, then NPI profile are the best, and they are very user friendly and very less code and straightforward. But there are users who don't have access to our NPI profile tables, then they can still get the information, using SPP or PMI SPP tables, or even if you don't have an NPI, or you're looking for the data for keys, then the PMI SPP tables are the best one. And the next part 3 will be talking on overview of gender. In this one, we'll talk about how to retrieve the gender, race, ethnicity, and language information using our NPI and PMI SPP tables. So we have some queries that we'll be presenting, just give you overview of how to query our NPI and PMI SPP tables. So as I said earlier, gender information is already coming from and it's already there. So what's new is that we are now fetching even from NPS as well. Along with gender, we also have ethnicity, race, and language. So these are the use cases that we'll be going through, and without any delay, so let's go on to our first use case. So the first use case talks about how to query the NPI profile table and retrieve the gender information using it. So in this query, as you see that, we have used our NPI demographic table, and with very minimum, filters and search criteria, like we have used NPI, and we are able to get all the information, for the provider. If you see here on the right-hand side, on the NPIs, you see the race information, you also see the gender, ethnicity, language, all the information in one query using the NPI profile tables. And just a note for the PII and PHI purposes, we masked all the NPI data, and none of them is real that you have seen in this page. Moving on to our next use case. So this use case talks about, now there are users where they don't have access to our NPI profile tables. Then they can still get the same information using our SPP tables, but with another little bit more join criteria. Like, you have a demographic table, but you have to join with lean index, and also you will have to join with common code, as I mentioned, because in NPI profile, the code and descriptions are already embedded in the table, but when you're querying the PMI table, then you have to join with common code and specify which reference type code you're looking for. If you're looking for gender, then you have to specify the type code. And also, we also always recommend users to add the right filters to get the right with fast, it can give you a faster and better results. Like, for example, since we are looking for data from NPS, we have said that the source system is NPS, and always recommend to use the right filters, like looking for the active or deleted statuses. So always specify audit rec status code as A. So that will be giving you the right amount of with the less with a faster time. And moving on to our third use case, similar to the one that you have seen earlier. So this use case talks about how to retrieve the provider information, the language information based on NPI. So nothing has changed from the previous query, just the tables and everything remains same except the criteria of the common code reference type code. Earlier it was gender, now it was language reference code. For the language, there is also an attribute called as a provider language primary indicator that will specify if that it's a primary or a secondary language for the provider. Moving on. So the last use case that we'll be talking about is how to retrieve race and ethnicity information using SPP tables. So probably you might have observed that, we have divided for SPP tables, we divided for gender one use case separately because if we combine all the query, it is very big. So that's why we kept in different screenshots for your better understanding. And you might have also observed that when we have used our NPI profile tables, all the it's all can be achieved in one versus the PMI SPP tables. Just a note for you all to observe. So here, let's talk about this use case where we are using race and ethnicity, how to retrieve race and ethnicity. Coming to race, it has both race and sub-race, and ethnicity also has ethnicity code and ethnicity subcode. So since we have two common codes for the use case, so we have joined common code tables twice. And what has changed is, as I mentioned earlier, only the reference code instead of gender and language we have replaced with. And if you're looking for ethnicity information, just replace race code with ethnicity and the query should work. With this, I think, we are done with the use cases.
Great, thank you. So we do have a question in the chat. A user asked, does gender refer to the user identified gender or the biological gender? Is there a different term in the data tables to separate the two concepts?
So today, I mean, like we are getting data from NPES, right? As I mentioned earlier, and the source system does not give us that identifier to differentiate it. To answer your question today, we don't have that differentiation, or where you can identify it's a biological or the actual.
Okay, thank you. And another question, is the NPI assigned to a facility, practice, or a person?
So NPI is assigned to both a provider, which is an individual provider, and it can also be assigned to a practice as well, and for a given organization, both.
Thank you, Jill and Sandhya, so much. I know we had you on the previous data camp and very informational session, so we always appreciate you coming on and sharing more about MDM data. Thank you so much.